Well, good morning. Ain't that a good looking ATV? Well, what I'm working on tonight is my 2015 ArcticCat 500 TRV. And I'm just doing some maintenance. It's got about 1,700 miles on it, doing the differential oil change, engine oil change, oil filters, air filters, a few basic things. I thought I'd make a little video for people who's got ArcticCats. This might be helpful to you, and it's going to point out some tips, some spare parts I keep with me when I'm on the trail to help me get out of the bind if I have a breakdown or something, or someone else breaks down. I have extra tools and parts to help somebody out. Well, first of all, let's get to the differential. Of course, this is a four-wheel drive, so we've got a differential on the front and the rear. And on these ArcticCats, on these models, it's the 500, maybe the 700, several different models use this. Okay, there's a very, very small 8mm screw on the right-hand side of the front differential. You remove that with an 8mm socket, a 1/4-inch ratchet, and that's what the screw is going to look like. And you can see there's a little bit of fuzz. You usually will get that. I mean, it's 1,700 miles. That's not much, so I'm not worried about that at all. Now, on the other side, let's move over here, get some light on the subject. And you can see the large hole. That's where we fill it back with 80-90 oil. And then that's the check hole. When the oil starts coming out there, then you know it's full. And that too is also, the lower one is 8mm, and I'll tell you the size of the large one here in just a second. Let's move to the back. Okay, here we are at the rear, and the socket you're going to need is, turn around here, 17mm. So 17mm and an extension will get the fill plug removed. Once again, there's the 8mm. We'll be taking that out. And then over here, because this is on the rear of the differential, it's on the opposite side. Once again, there it is. You can barely see where I removed the drain screw at the very bottom there in the center. That drains that out. And let's see if we can remove this plug, see if we get any oil out of it here. Trying to do this with one hand. Let's see how this is going to work out. Not so good, evidently. Okay, take two. Let's see if we can't pull this out. Alright, once we get a little air into the differential, it'll start draining. There we go. I'm going to try not to drop that plug down in all that oil. Let's see if I can be. I almost did. Anyway, there she is. Now we got the oil draining. I'll let that drain for a while. And I've already did the front one. It's already drained out pretty good. I guess I could start on it. So here's the oil I'm going to be using. 80W90 Gear Lube GL5. Pretty common stuff. So I'll be using, but now I got to get a strategy though. How am I going to get that in there? So you get my light again. So I got to look at this earlier. I thought, man, how in the world am I going to get that oil in there without really making a mess? Because it's tucked in there kind of deep. So I got a plan. We'll see how it works out. I got me one of these little suction cup doodads. Now I went ahead and I took it apart because I wanted to make sure that was absolutely clean, because I never know what I've used it in the past for. But it's all good and clean, so I'll use that to set me up some 80W90. I've looked up my specs here somewhere. It looks like, see the differential capacity, 9.3 ounces in the front, rear is 8.5. So that's not so bad. It won't take much at all. A couple of squirts and I should have it filled up. So let's turn around. Let's see. First of all, get the drain plug put back in. But I need to get all that little metal shavings cleaned off first. Let's get all that wiped off. I'll put that back in place and we'll start filling up the front differential. Okay, that's what it should look like. Get all the metal off of it. It took a little bit of work. I had to spray a little carburetor cleaner on it, and then I blasted it with an air hose to really get all the last little slivers of metal off of it. So make sure that thing's clean before you put it back in. Okay, tip number one, leave your bucket of oil. And by the way, that oil is from other projects. The differential didn't drain out that much oil. It was only a few ounces in there. Because if you don't, sure enough, you go to put that screw in there, you're going to drop it. It's going to go in the bottom of all that oil. So let's see if I can get this started. Okay, this is going to be take two. All right, instead of doing the ratchet deals, I'm just going to stick my hand in here and get it started. There we go. Because I was kind of at an angle and I wasn't getting the thread started. So trying to do this, hold the camera, get my glasses in the right angle so I can see. It's all a pain, but there we're cooking. Got it started to snug that up. Let's try to see about adding oil to the front of this thing. See how that's going to work out. Of course, absolutely don't forget to snug this up. Actually, let's get rid of the ratchet. Let's get it closer. Okay, now we're cooking. We just learn as we go. All right, nice and snug. Don't worry about that coming out. And now let's add some oil. Okay, so here's my strategy. Got my wife's mixing pitcher here. That thing's very handy for doing stuff out here in the shop for measuring oil. But I'm just did this because I poured that in there so to make it easy access and instead of trying to dip this in there and get it all out. So, but don't tell her what I've been doing with this. Next time she makes a cake, it may taste funny. But I had a little leakage here on this. So I put me a zip tie on there because that's pretty thick oil. So let's see how this is going to work. Because I don't know how many times it's going to take to get that all put in there. It's slowly going in. Some thick oil. But you don't need to wait on this. Okay, it took a few seconds, but finally got it drawn up in there. Let's see how this works. All right, where are we at? There we are. There's one good squirt. Probably take another one. Get another scoop. Okay, there she's starting to come out now. I forget the camera shot. There she goes. You can see that's coming out that lower screw hole. So it took about 2 scoops and we got that done. So we'll finish putting this part together. And also watch on this little fill check screw. It's got a little O-ring on there if it'll focus anyway. There she goes. Make sure there are O-rings in place that don't get lost because it may stick to the housing when you remove it. So get that put back in there. So difficult trying to do this stuff with one hand. Okay, there we got it. Ta-da! So I'll snug that up, put my drain in there, and that will be done. Alright, so last step on the differentials, get your 17mm socket, put it on here, snug that up. There we go. And we're done with that. Now let's go on to something else. What else I want to talk about? The oil change. I already did the oil change, but it's thing simple. At least I'll tell you what tools you need. For this 500, takes about 3 quarts of the what I use, the 10W40 synthetic. Okay, let me talk about oil then. That might be a good subject. Where'd my oil go? Yeah, there's what I used. The synthetic ArcticCat oil is what I used in it. Keep in mind, ATVs, your engine and your transmission is all in the same gearbox, and you have clutches in there, wet clutches. So you have to be sure to use the correct oil. So genuine ATV oil has something called friction modifiers in it. It's designed to lubricate the gears but not to make things so slick that the clutches will slip. A mistake that sometimes people can make is putting automotive synthetic oil in their ATV, and doing so could shorten the life of your clutches, your wet clutches. So keep that in mind. Use the right, and you don't have to be ArcticCat oil. You can use, Lucas. They make a good, I think, a good ATV oil that has the friction modifiers in it. So keep that in mind. I think about 3/4 did this one. Simple enough. The socket too is I used a 13/16 on this. On the bottom, you just got this large nut. There it is. And there's also a little metal plate there. You can take 4 8mm screws loose, and there's a screen in behind it. I took that off and looked at it. There was nothing in there. I guess if you had some engine trouble, if you saw any metal shavings or black pieces of plastic, that could be your timing chain tensioner could be wearing. You'd kind of give an early warning system. If you looked at that screen and saw a bunch of debris, you know you need to check something out. So got that done. Of course, the oil filter's right there. Really easy, unscrew and to replace. So oil change on these things are very, very simple, but just keep in mind to use the correct oil. All right, now let's discuss air filters. This particular model only uses a foam filter. There's no paper element filter. You know, every manufacturer does different models do different things. I kind of like the paper ideal better for most consumers because it's kind of simple, stupid. If it gets dirty, it starts choking out, you put a new one on it, you're good to go. With the foam filters, they do a good job, but they only do a good job if you oil them. Unfortunately, some people don't read their manuals. They don't understand how foam filters work. They take them out, they may wash them out in gasoline, get them really good and clean and dry. They hear, oh, I've done a great job. It's nice and clean. I got all the oil off of it. Put it back in the ATV. They go for a ride. They come back and now the engine's smoking because they just ingested all that dirt and dust right into their engine. Because keep in mind, if you take one of these foam filters loose, hold it up to the sunlight, you can see the sun through the foam. And if you can see the sun through there, the dust particles will flow right through it. So keep in mind, the only thing that stops that dust, fine particles of dust, from flowing through this foam material is oil. So you have to put a light layer of oil on this. You can buy that stuff in a can. You can spray it on there like K&N makes an oil that you spray on there, or you can just take it loose and just pour you some oil all around it, and then roll it up and squish it back and forth just to get it distributed. Because remember, the oil is what's going to keep it your engine clean. It's going to stop the dirt and dust. Keep that in mind. This one here is I'm going to replace it because you can see it's starting to rot and fall apart. I'm going to get me a new filter for this one. All right, what else do I want to talk about? Okay, talk about things to check. Okay, one thing to check is your bearings and your wheel. So I've got it jacked up right now on stands. Got a little bit of play, but that's okay. The biggest thing you want to watch out for is your ball joints here. The ball joints can get wore out. Of course, you want to check your rubber boots, make sure they're not torn. Both, spin the wheels, make sure there's no tears in them. Because once they tear, get water and grit in there, the universal's going to go out, and that can be expensive. Another thing is, of course, you got your lower ball joint. Where is it at? Come on, there it is. There's the lower ball joint, upper ball joint. But also, a critical thing is these tie rod ends. Let me get around here and see it, because I keep spare. Here we go, those little tie rod ends. And you got a total of 4. Keep eye on those. In fact, I keep 2 because there's a left hand and a right hand. I keep 2 with me as I'm out in the woods, because I've seen people get stranded because the tie rod would pop off and really messes up your day. So there's a few parts I keep with me to try to keep me out of jams like that. And I'll show you that here in a second. Of course, also the same thing on the rear axles. Check them out. Make sure there's no tear on the boots. Check all these bushings here that pivot back and forth, then get worn and cause you trouble. Now, once the ATV is on the ground, you can sometimes really get a good push on the wheel and rock it. If you feel it clicking, popping back and forth, you know you got issues, because you got a whole lot of plastic bushings in here that sometimes need to be just all completely replaced after a lot of miles. Oh, while I'm back here, this part, that's your spark arrestor. There's a screen in here, and those can get carboned up and cause you to lose power. So pop those out from time to time and service those. Make sure it's nice and clean. Oh, and in case you don't know, maybe you just bought a used ArcticCat or ATV and you don't know this, the owner's manual should be shoved up underneath the seat. The plastic bag, there's a little pocket up under here. So look for your manual. Hopefully it's still there if you've recently picked up a used ATV, or at least that's the way ArcticCat does it. I don't know what other how other manufacturers do it. What did I hit? I think I mentioned I said it was 2015. This is 2008. Where did I get 2015 from? I don't know. Yeah, this thing's got some age on it. Okay, let's talk about what I carry with me. So, of course, I keep me a nice socket set. Something else even I added to it is a little breaker bar. So I have a ability to take a wheel off if I need to. If I have problems, I can pop a wheel off. So I got everything I can do that with. A little first aid kit, spare oil, need some engine oil, some fix-a-flat, and some spare tools. Different things I do. Okay, like say for instance, run out of fuel. Somebody runs out of fuel, and we need to siphon gas from one to another. We got a little rubber hose. I got that. Got some spare wire. You never know when you need maybe have to hot wire something. More tire gauge. Plugs. Getting flat tires. You never know about that. I keep a spare belt with me because this one's got the variable speed belt underneath this cover. So I got all the tools I need. If I strip out a belt on the trail, I can take care of that. Simple 12-volt test light. Talk about spare parts a while ago. I keep for me both a left hand and a right hand ball joint, or tie rod end. It's not a ball joint, tie rod end. So one of those pops off on the middle of a ride, that's going to ruin your day. And got some spare bolts. Those are, I forget what they're for. I think those are the for the lower ball joints. Sometimes they used to have an issue with those coming loose and getting lost, so I got a couple spares. Keep a spare spark plug. What else have I got in here? A screwdriver, some tape. Just some basic stuff to get yourself out of a bind if need be. All right, remember how I mentioned that screen earlier? So I did a screenshot from my computer. There's that metal plate. That's your drain plug goes right there, and there's that little metal screen up inside. So you can inspect that if you want while you're doing an oil change. You pull off those 4 screws. There's a little rubber O-ring on there, but you can reuse that. It's not an issue. But if you pull that off and you see some debris on that screen, then you might have some engine troubles. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Of course, we've got shop manuals, and if you got ArcticCat on our website at mymowerparts.com, under free parts and repair manuals, we've got an ArcticCat section there. We've got a lot of free service manuals. So if you want an ArcticCat and you want a free service manual, go to our website and download it. No charge. We no longer sell ArcticCat, so we don't have parts and stuff like that anymore. But I still leave the manuals up there to help people out. But these things are great because you got your maintenance chart. Tells you about spark plug, what you need to do every so often, and kind of remind yourself. Something I need to do is I'm gonna flush the brake fluid. I don't have .4. It requires .4 instead of .3. So I'm gonna get me some. I'll just show you how simple that is. So, all right, turn the steering wheel. So, of course, there's your reservoir up here. Take that cap off. Fill it up, and you'll see your bleeder screw. Right here on the front, 8mm socket. Just crack that, give it a few squirts, pump it up, and then crack the screw, let it bleed out, and just fill it up with fresh brake fluid. It's a good idea to flush that, especially with its age. I'm sure it's past due. And then there's another one back here, I believe. I have to try to find it. There's another reservoir somewhere, I know. Let me dig it up. Okay, so here it is. So you got your brake pedal here, and your cylinder is right there, and the brake fluid for it is right there. So you got 2 reservoirs for brake fluid to check and keep an eye on, because that's easily to forget because it's hid underneath the seat, where that one you kind of look at it every day. Okay, another tip, especially when you got these liquid cooled ATVs, is being able to make sure. I'm just trying to see some light in behind there. The camera's not picking it up too well, but there you go. See, there you go. You can see through the radiator. I've seen cases where you get in some real soupy mud and just plug them things up solid, and so cause you some overheating issues. So you want to avoid that. Set something to keep an eye on and keep that washed out well. But go easy with pressure washers. Those pressure washers can bend things up on those cooling fins. Oh, and as I was putting this back together, I realized I left out a step because mine has a skid plate. Yours may or may not. If you have a skid plate, then you'll need a T30 Torx bit. Got these weird bolts that go on there to fasten this skid plate back up in place. So T30 is what you need. So while I'm into it this far, I thought, well, let me check the brakes also, because I got to looking at the rotors. I felt some little scratches in it. I was afraid I was maybe getting in the metal. These pads are, even when they're new, they're relatively thin. And so if you want to do a quick inspection, just pull the wheel off, 4 lug nuts, 10mm socket here. It's a good idea because they got some locking, Loctite on these threads. But if you put a few, because they usually extend through, and they can get really rusty on the exposed threads. So put a few drops of oil on it, so as you unscrew it, it'll come out a little bit easier. So that can help you a little bit. And once you just take the upper screw and lower screw out, it just comes right out. Now, it's a little bit weird when you first look at these about getting the brake pads off. It may deceive you slightly, because okay, I'm gonna try to illustrate what I'm trying to get across to you. See, you might look at this and say, well, you can't get the goofy brake pads off, you know, because if you push this back, that O-ring's blocking you. But they got it with it, they just barely will, but you got to take one off at a time and rotate it around. So let me get my clamp on there and I'll show you. Okay, so here's all it takes. Once you put the clamp on there, you said this compresses all the way against the aluminum housing, and this one doesn't, because you got that big rubber O-ring. And once you do that, it'll give you just enough space to get one brake pad to come off and rotate around and come off. And the other one the same way. Get it off, rotate, come off. That's how you do that. So I just want to check these pads out. They are thin, but they're really tough. They hold up pretty well. I'm not into any metal yet, but they are pretty tough pad. But it's something to keep an eye on. They kind of sneak up on you. Once you get metal to metal, you catch it in time, so that way you don't have to be changing out your rotors. There's another little trick on these rotors. If you get them scratched up, take you a hand grinder that has one of those sanding discs on it that's got not the grinding wheel, but it's like a sandpaper disc, and start your ATV up, put it in gear, let this thing slowly rotate, then take your hand grinder and you know, engage it and let it spin, and you can smooth that surface back up a little bit, take the high spots out of it. Sort of like a poor man's turning lathe. So from what I can see with these brake pads, I'm going to leave them on there, not going to worry about it right now. I don't use this a whole lot like I used to out in the woods. I usually use it around the house here, hauling off debris and stuff with trailers and that kind of stuff. So I'll put this back together and go on to the next little project here. Well, I'm about to wrap this up. So last thing I want to talk about is, now we got everything back on the ground, is checking your bushings. You get in here, rock your wheels back and forth, watch these bushings right here, look for any movement. Same way with your ball joints. Where they at? Come here, focus, focus. There's the ball joints, the upper and lower. Get in there, rock that tire back and forth really good. See if you see any movement. Let's also check your tie rod ends. Work your steering back and forth. Make sure there's no play in these ball joints, because you don't want one of those popping off on you when you're out in the middle of the woods. And of course, do the same with the rear. Get in there, rock that push back and forth on that tire. Check all these bushings. Look for any play. If you've got a bunch of play, get in there and take care of it. Get them replaced. So doing a few things like that, keep your machine running and keep you from breaking down. One last thing, I guess, before I close, talk about how dangerous these stupid things are. They're fun, they're great to be out in the woods with, but I've seen a lot of people get hurt with them. So, as a suggestion, you know, I would steer toward a side-by-side, something you got a roll bar, something's going to protect you. I've just seen too many people get hurt on these things. In fact, myself, I ripped this box right here. Probably saved me. I rolled this thing, and luckily, with, you know, because it came on top of me, it did rip my groin muscle, put me out of commission for 30 days. I couldn't hardly walk. But if it wasn't for that box, I hate to think what would have happened to me. This much weight on top of you. But you get some teenager on one of these things, and you know how teenagers are. Indestructible. and they get taken off and roll something like this big and heavy with no protection, and you could be crippled up for life. So if you're going to get something to take out into the woods, I would strongly suggest spend the extra money, get you a side-by-side, keep you and your family safe. If you do have one of these, give it respect, be very careful, watch the hills, just be careful. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. See ya. Bye.